So Ali, just a reminder for our entire panel, we'll have about 30 minutes for interactive panel discussion, followed by 10 minutes for Q&A. So I'd now trust you to make the best use of this time. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us after lunch. It's always boring to have that, and I have to wait it for the chair, and you know chairs are very important these days. So, the topic of the today is about the SME financing and what impediments and what facilitation our financial institutions have in it. What kind of formal financing options SME has, what kind of informal financing option they have, what are the disadvantages of not attaining the formal financing for entrepreneurs to become big, and what kind of issues pertaining to documentation that could happen on SME. If they have high documentation, would they be able to get the formal financing? Or as yesterday mentioned by Ali Sarfraz, that there is a randomized study that in South America, if you do too much of documentation within a particular sector, it could be counterproductive. So we need to understand the ground realities from the panel. We have a very diversified panel here, where we have people ranging from tech industry, where they talk about the numbers in the air and their assets are all known to them, but they have of some value. And from there, we have our friend from Gilgit-Baltistan who's trying to develop something on agri-value chain. And again, we know the wastages of food are so much, and that tomato which was wasted 2 months ago is now like becoming a gold. So, but he's into some other businesses. He'd like to talk about that. Then we have two ladies here. One has a very inspiring story about how a small woman entrepreneur can move up the ladder in the textile embroidery business, and how she could access the finance, and how she didn't like the markets where the informal financing is available. And then we have Naila, which she has this pie in the sky, which is one of the food retailing brand that's there for the past many years. And she's been in the formal business within that site, and how her journey is. And last but not the least is like my friend Wasif. He's from Maria B, and so it's a known brand to all of us. But do banks realize that kind of equity, and they give them the kind of access they give to the big names? So we'll go through that journey, and for that I would like my panelists to briefly talk about their journey, about the issues pertaining to financing, formal and financing in that journey, and documentation. So I'll start with the lady who has done this in textile. So Samina, I'd like to start with you and give you your powerful story, which probably not many have heard.
Thank you. Initially, it was very difficult for me to start this business. Start किया 2 मशीन से, कुछ भी पता नहीं था, बस रखा और स्टार्ट किया. एक चैलेंज एक्सेप्ट किया था, और वो चैलेंज था कि मैं अपना कुछ काम करवाती थी किसी और फैक्ट्री से. वहाँ पे मेरा काम ख़राब हुआ. उन्होंने कहा जी आप ख़ुद मशीन्स लगाएं तो आपको पता लगे कि किस तरह से काम होता है, लेबर से कैसे काम लिया जाता है. बस उस दिन कुछ ऐसा दिमाग में आया कि लगानी है और काम स्टार्ट करना है. 2 मशीन से स्टार्ट किया. नाउ आई हैव 24 मशीन्स एंड आई हैव 2 सेपरेट यूनिट्स. अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह अच्छा चल रहा है. डिफ़िकल्ट है मैनेज करना समटाइम्स, क्योंकि इश्यूज़ हैं. अच्छी लेबर अवेलेबल नहीं होती है, अच्छी पार्टीज़ अवेलेबल नहीं होती हैं. लेकिन विद द पैसेज ऑफ टाइम ये सारी चीज़ों को क्रॉस करते करते बेहतरी की तरफ जा रही हैं.
Zabardast. What she's talking about, that she started from a very small scale with 2 embroidery machine, and now she has many more machines than that, and she's planning to expand into that. And she has some excess of finance from Karanda's innovation fund as well. सो समीना, हमें ज़रा अपने इस ये जो इनोवेशन फंड के जो आई चीज़ें इसके बारे में बताएं, और ये भी बताइए कि आप क्या बैंक के पास गई, उन्होंने आपको फाइनेंस दिया कि नहीं?
हाँ जी, मुझे अमाउंट चाहिए थी अपने बिज़नेस को एक्सपेंड करने के लिए, और सबसे ज़्यादा जो मेजर पोर्शन था कि मुझे बिल्डिंग चाहिए। मेरे पास एक्चुअली इस वक्त 2 रेंटेड बिल्डिंग्स हैं, और मेरे पास ज़मीन है जिसके ऊपर मुझे बिल्डिंग कंस्ट्रक्शन करनी थी। उसके लिए मैंने जब करण दास का देखा, मैंने अप्लाई किया और मुझे वहाँ से फंड्स मिले, मेरी बिल्डिंग स्टार्ट हो चुकी हुई है। मैंने इनिशियली 2-3 बैंक से अप्रोच किया था। उनकी स्टार्ट में तो था कि जी हम आपको इतनी अमाउंट दे देंगे, हम इतनी अमाउंट दे देंगे, लेकिन जब पेपर वर्क के ऊपर बात आती है तो वो डिफरेंट स्टोरी हो जाती है, वो टोटली डिफरेंट होती है। और उसमें ऑब्वियसली मार्कअप रेट भी उनका ज़्यादा है। जैसे स्टार्ट में वो स्टार्ट करते हैं कि जी आपको मतलब 10 मिलियन तक हम दे देंगे, आपको 20 मिलियन तक दे देंगे, लेकिन जब वो पेपर वर्क स्टार्ट होता है तो वो होते होते वो 50 लाख 60 लाख के ऊपर कि जी अप्रूव इतना हुआ है, इससे ऊपर नहीं जा सकता। तो वो चीज़ में काम की नहीं होती है, क्योंकि हम एक पूरा प्लान कर चुके होते हैं। करण दास के साथ ये है कि हर चीज़ इनको बताई, ये हमारी सारी एक्सपेंशन के हैं, और हमने बिल्डिंग अपनी कंप्लीट करके इकट्ठा यूनिट करना है, उससे अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह हमें काफ़ी बेनिफिट हुआ।
काफ़ी बेनिफिट हो। अच्छा, आप थोड़ा सा हमें ये भी एक्सप्लेन करिए कि जैसे आज़म क्लॉथ मार्केट में आप जाती हैं, वहाँ पे जब लेंडर्स होते हैं उनके साथ आपका तजुर्बा कैसा रहा?
देखिए जी, टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर बहुत मुश्किल काम है। टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर में आई एम सॉरी टू से बहुत जाहिल किस्म के अवाम बसते हैं, जो किसी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन में आना नहीं चाहते हैं, जो किसी मतलब वो कहते हैं कि बस हमने इतना पे करना है, आपने काम करना है, देना है तो दें, काम करके दें, अदरवाइज़ नहीं। आज़म मार्केट का ये सीन है कि वो 1-1 साल तक आपकी पेमेंट्स को फंसा के रखते हैं, वो आपको टाइम ही पे नहीं करते हैं। और जो बिज़नेस है टेक्सटाइल का, वो डेली बेसिस के ऊपर आपको जो एक्सपेंस करना होता है उसके लिए आपको कैश की पार्टीज चाहिए होती हैं, और कैश की पार्टियाँ वो आती हैं जो कम पैसों पे भी काम करती हैं। आई मीन ब्रांड अगर हमें अच्छे पैसे पे करते हैं तो वो आती हैं कि 5 पैसे 10 पैसे कम के ऊपर करें, हम आपको कैश पे करते हैं। तो काफ़ी मतलब डिफरेंट अप एंड डाउन है इस सारी चीज़ में, जिसको कि हम लोग फेस करते हैं।
अच्छा, ये जब 5 से 10% कम देते हैं तो कितने टाइम में आप उन्हें डिलीवर कर देते हैं?
नहीं, हमें वो 1 हफ्ते के बाद पेमेंट आ जाती है, लेकिन जो ब्रांड्स हैं जो अच्छा पे करते हैं, जिनकी मतलब अच्छे प्राइस के ऊपर वो हमसे काम करते हैं, उनका 45 to 60 डेज का साइकिल होता है।
So what she's saying that is about there are 2 kind of markets where you have formal financing and informal financing. And within the informal financing, there is a market where the Azam cloth market is in Lahore, where the players are really extracting juice from SME partners like that, and they deliver the goods to them, but the payment will take a year or something. So they go to other kind of informal financing option, what they say the cash parties. And these cash parties give them financing and within a week, but when they go to big brands like Maria B and others, and they take 45 to 60 days. So ineffectively, if she's saying 5 to 10%, if we assume it's an 8% return of 60 days, so you would imagine 8 into 6 is about 48% annual. And at this high interest rate, even the SME can get finance on formal 18 to 20%. So that the exuberant rates are exist in the market, there are inefficiencies which are to be captured. But since the banks do not have the inclination towards going to the private sector at first, because we know of the government borrowing, and within the private sector, their inclination is toward the big names and the name lending and all that, and where the big groups are involved, and they're far and few to come on the SME. And that's the problem. That's a big problem, because that's the engine of the growth, and we need to push that. And once we have that formal financing system into SME, into the people like Samina, your economy can really grow. So that's the message what we have to give, and we congratulate Karan Das, and thank you Karan Das from Samina behalf to give her the financing to build up her own factory. So next I move to my friend from Gilgit-Baltistan, and he has a very interesting story to tell, and I would like Asif to start with.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So my story start with, I will tell you some of the story, the history from where I started. I'm a mechanical engineer from NUST. I'm graduated in 2017. So from my childhood, I have been saying that there is a lot of apricot that is being produced in Gilgit-Baltistan, but around 70% of it is wasted everywhere. If you come in season, so you can see the orange color of apricot everywhere. So it is wasted on the ground. Nobody look after it or try to market it. So while I was doing my final year project, so I tried to do some research on it. I came to know that Pakistan is the 6th largest apricot producing country in the world, and we are wasting 70% of it, and majority of it is being produced in Gilgit-Baltistan. And beside that, we are importing 300 tons of apricot annually from Afghanistan. So that was a shocking number for me. So I studied the problem why we are not doing this. So I came to know that since the infrastructure is not good from Skardu to Islamabad market and other cities, so the only thing that can be done was to reduce the drying period. So what I did was I developed a dryer which can reduce the drying period of apricot. I took this project to one of the startup competition that was being held in NUST. I shared my idea and people loved it. So what I did was I started searching for brilliant minds across Pakistan who can understand this problem and this opportunity. So we built a team. Then we raised an investment of 15 million Pakistani rupees in our first round. And we built our first state-of-the-art facility in Skardu, which is one of the first kind in Gilgit-Baltistan. So this processing facility can process cherries, apricots, mulberry, raisins, and apples. For the first time, we exported apricots in Dubai and other Gulf countries, and we sold this apricot in Islamabad, Karachi, and Lahore through e-commerce sites like Daraz and other well-known sites. After that, we launched our dried range, which was a big hit. Everybody loves it. So we have now our presence in across Pakistan through e-commerce sites. Beside that, we have a fully functioning processing facility in Skardu. In a second round of business development, we are planning to now expand it, and we are going to, in the first year, we started with 56 farmers, and this is our second year, and we have reached 656 farmers. So we want to grow exponentially because the need is high, people are poor. So there's one thing I want to tell you because why I picked this idea. People in Gilgit-Baltistan are mostly related to their agriculture, and their source of income is only the produce that is being produced agriculturally. So each and every, even the most poor farmer have 10 trees, minimum of 10 apricot trees. So what I want to do is to scale appropriately so that I can reach maximum farmers and I can benefit them. So we are now going to financial institutions to pitch our idea. We have already done our pilot project, and based upon those learning, we want to expand. So we are going to institutional finance for institutional financing in our second round, and that's my story.
It's a very powerful story, and that tells about a lot about that kind of natural resources in the food and the horticulture where we produce in the various part of our country, and how much that is wasted, and how we can add value over there, and that not create the exportable surplus, but can tap the domestic market as well. So first you must have gone to the banks within the Gilgit-Baltistan area for your financing. So tell me about your experience over there.
Yes, we went to banks, but since we were a startup, So there's two problems with banks in Gilgit-Baltistan. So what I have realized is they are taking the deposits from Gilgit-Baltistan. There are very few numbers of business in which they invest. So might be there's, I think there's very risky. So we went to banks for financing, but they said you have to keep some collateral or mortgage. So we didn't have that. So we didn't get any financing from banks, but we did informal financing from family and friends for our first round.
So the first round, of course, like any SME, what we talk about is an informal financing from family and friends. And when you go to bank, that's a Pakistan-wide problem. They ask for the collateral, and they don't appreciate the business idea. They don't like to, mortgage their assets in cash flows. They don't assert the business feasibility based on the cash flows, and can book that cash flows as a collateral. So that's a problem within the Pakistan banking industry. But the other problem which I like to highlight from that, what he's talked about, that the banks in Gilgit-Baltistan are mainly taking the deposits from there, and they're not lending over there. When we were talking to Asif, told me that they're about in a 3 kilometer of this bazaar of his place. There about 15 to 20 bank branches are there, and they all are present, and they all are competing in deposits. But in terms of lending, there are very few. And that's not a problem what we have confined to the Gilgit-Baltistan. When you go to Azad Jammu Kashmir, the 7 districts over there face the similar problem. When you go to the KP, most of the KP is facing the similar problem. Even Bank of Khyber has very limited lending within the KP, but they are present over the KP, and all the banks are there. When we go to Balochistan, we face the similar problem. So that's somehow a big problem, that the savings which are being taken from those far-fetched areas are being deployed in the other parts of the Pakistan, like Lahore, Karachi, Faisalabad, Islamabad, Gujranwala, Multan, all those. So that's one area where some intervention is required somehow, that some kind of a saving channelized from a certain area has to go for the entrepreneurs like Asif in that particular area. So that's the story. And now in the second round of financing, what kind of financial institutions you're looking at, and what's your aim of second round of financing?
We are looking for second round, we are planning to expand the processing facility. So there are two parts in our business. First is imparting the education to the farmers, because right now they don't know how to grow their produce, how to harvest them. So we have to train the farmers. At the same time, we need the processing facility so that we can process it. So we are going to financial institutions so that we can lend the money from them against equity, and we can make our we can expand our processing facility plus the farmers training, and then we can have outlets across Pakistan so that we can expand.
So is there any encouragement you're getting from these banks?
Yeah, a bit, but there's a long way to go, so I can't say.
There's a long way to go. Our friends from Capital Market are sitting over there, the Karandas is sitting over there, and all the people. He has a brilliant idea coming from Gilgit-Baltistan, where you coming up with inclusive growth. You must look into the business, and any one of you can participate in terms of the equity partnership or some kind of a debt structuring. That would be a great help, and that would help you to grow in other businesses within the Gilgit-Baltistan and other far-fetched area of the Pakistan as well. So from now, I move to my friends who are more from the urban side and coming up with a different background. But first I'll go to the Naila and like to hear about the story of the Pie in the Sky and her 20-year journey of building those brands and accessing finance based on that.
Assalamualaikum. It's not 20 years. It's almost 19 years.
19 years.
Okay. But yes, I started Pie in the Sky in 2001, January 2001, with informal financing. I borrowed from my husband and my in-laws, and luckily have not had to pay it back. Yeah, it started, with one small outlet in a commercial area. We had our retail outlet in front and a kitchen at the back, and you know, it's been sort of a very long journey and sort of, you know, very uphill battle at times. But sort of, when I go back, in fact, on Thursday, we are opening 21st outlet in Hyderabad. This is the second outlet in Hyderabad, and you know, we have, you know, the rest are in Karachi. Apart from that, some years ago, we started Chatterbox Cafe. So we have 2 cafes as part of the group. We have Chatterbox Delhi, which is also part of the group. And about 2 years ago, I started a chocolate shop. So it's a boutique, you know, imported Belgian chocolate shop. And so it all comes under the umbrella of Pie in the Sky. We've been fairly lucky in that a lot of the growth has been self-financed, in that our cash flow, we've just kept investing back in the company. We did, when I wanted to buy a commercial plot in the industrial area where I wanted to build my kitchen, we did take, we had to take financing for that. But luckily, with, you know, we were able to pay that loan back faster, you know, than the term period, and had to pay a penalty for it because we sort of pay, you know, had the money to pay them back earlier than they anticipated. So, but I just felt, you know, it was better that way. So yeah, that's the journey.
So that's good. So you never thought about making yourself big, like coming up with a franchise model, having 50 branches all across the Pakistan?
You know, I mean, ideally, that's the ideal scenario, but I just feel that franchising, I'm a little nervous of franchising in Pakistan because I feel that, you know, it's a brand that you've invested 19 years of yourself into. And I don't think you have, I'm scared of the unethical elements that are out there. You know, you have to be very careful who you give a franchise to, and so I'm just a little nervous. I'm a little skeptical of that. You know, obviously I'd like to go sort of national, but that then requires, again, the capital and the, you know, the expertise to sort of scale it up to that level, which is something that's a different story.
So if you have capital, you can always hire expertise. So what is hindering for that capital?
I think being mentally prepared to maybe scale up to that level. You know, you sort of, so far I've been, it's sort of within my control, and I feel that I can control every aspect of the business. And I guess maybe, as I said, you know, it's sort of 19 years of putting yourself out there, and so you get a little, you're sort of nervous of losing control maybe a little bit as an entrepreneur.
So that's a very, 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 very honest opinion, and that's a big issue which we face from the SME side as well. Because when you become corporatized, when you become big, you tend to have dilute your ownership. But that's not essentially the losing control. Then you are controlling more on the less what you put.
Yeah.
That's like more of a control if you
Yeah.
think it the other way around.
I mean, I think, you know, right now the business has reached a stage where I think we really do need to look at, you know, at the next level.
At the next level.
At the next level.
So if you think if you go, will banks be able to finance you long term for your expansion plan?
You know, I think it also depends on the relationship you have with certain banks, and we, as a company, we do have relationships with certain banks. But then again, you know, the demands are so high, as Samina also pointed out. You know, they paint a very rosy picture, and then when it comes down to it, the sort of the finer print, when you start reading, then you really do get a little doubtful as to whether that's the way to go.
So there are not many sweet spots in the deal.
No. No.
Okay, tell me about your experience of the informal financing on your supplier side. So essentially you are into a retailing business in most of your part. So you probably buy on credit and sell on cash.
No.
So what kind of credit facilities you get from your buying side and informal, the supplier credit, or you rely on other parts as well?
No, we do have suppliers who give us credit, but and we Unfortunately, I think as economic conditions have been a little uncertain in the past year or so, a lot of them, their credit terms have become a little tighter. They want payments much faster. They want payments in cash. Though we prefer, because we prefer documentation and we prefer going through the banking channels. But unfortunately, a lot of suppliers now prefer to be paid in cash. Their credit terms are much shorter now, and they're a little more skittish when they're giving you products now, because they feel that maybe you're going to hold on to their payments. So they sort of start hounding you a little faster now than they used to.
So I can safely say that with the recent documentation efforts by the FBR, has actually adversely impacted your business in the short term?
It's made it a little more difficult as far as our suppliers go, but we try and convince them, or we try and bring them on board, or we try and look for suppliers who are willing to come into that documentation net. It's not easy, and certain times we don't have a choice. We have to just give in to whatever they want, but yeah, it has had an impact, definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely.
From here, I move to Vasif. Vasif, this is I like you to go through your success of the Maria B, and yourself having a banking background as well. So you would like to talk on the behalf of other three participants and as well. So what kind of a supplier credit we have, what kind of a distributor you find, and when you go for the machinery import, and what kind of a credit you get, and when you go to banks, when you structure deals, what are the impediments in it. So I would like you to take more time to explain your business, and for the others as well, because you have that kind of a banking background, to translate their story into the numbers as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Maria B has a very similar story. Started in 1999. Started in 1999. One shop, but from day one we decided that we would go into the sort of formal sector more than stay away from the entire informal net. And just to put this in perspective for everyone, the Azam market that the lady was speaking about right now is estimated to be a 300 to 400 billion rupees single market within Lahore. So when we talk about scale and we talk about size, these are big business. Thank you. Hello, is this better? Yeah, so when we talk about scale, that's a huge market that is completely focused towards the informal sector. It has nothing to do with the formal sector. And I'd agree with both of them that after the FBR reforms, we're having a lot of issues with our suppliers who only want to work on cash. They do not want to get into the documented economy, even at the expense of their own business. So, and the FBR obviously does not allow us input on those cash purchases. So it's a problem across the board for all of us. So my story is a little bit different, because I thought once I decided to join the family business, I thought I had a background in corporate banking. I would understand I knew the prudential regulations. I knew everything that the bank looks at when they're trying to finance you. But I would tend to agree with most of them that once you go to the SME sector banks and you start having a conversation with them, it's quite difficult to raise the kind of capital or the kind of funding you need to actually grow. We start off with a big amount, and when they're offered peanuts against, and we had collateral, by the way, we were willing to give collateral. I mean, if you look at a case study, it would be a great case study that this company had collateral, it had qualified management, there was an ex-banker sitting there, etc., etc. But when it came down to it, it was extremely difficult. And when I had joined from the banking sector, I had obviously planned all our growth, and we grew a lot in the last 10 years on formal financing, which is bank financing. But in the end, I have to say, all our I realized very soon when I got out of the formal banking mentality, and I realized that the informal credit was so easily available, and it was so lenient in terms of its conditions. There are certain portions where you're right, the cost of informal financing is very high, but there are also so many pockets where it's so low. that I did my analysis on an Excel sheet, which banking had taught me, and I realized that, okay, so I can get financing almost free from some avenues, and that's exactly what we did. And the cash cycle was, our cash cycle was not as great as maybe the bakery section or the food and beverage sector, because we do have to sell on credit as well to various distributors. So that financing gap was bridged by latching on to the vendor financing in a big way. And let me just point out that the reason why it's so difficult to get in a lot of people from the textile sector, which is the largest manufacturing sector in Pakistan, in the end of the day, that's our backbone, from the khadis of Banaras town in Karachi to the looms of Faisalabad. This is our strength, manufacturing, and none of them go for formal financing because informal financing is easily available. I'll give you an example. A lot of females would be part of committees where you put in a monthly amount of money, and you have these turns. Now the informal market has, and I'm talking about, by the way, 250 million committees, 500 million rupee committees, all people you've never heard of because they're not in the formal sector, they're not on the tax net. So you put in a certain amount in a month, and they actually discount it. So let's assume, Ahmed says that I need the money this month, but my turn is not there yet. Someone will sell that amount to him at a certain percentage. And if you really work back, it's very close to Kaibor. I did that. I was like, okay, they're smart. They know what they're doing. So hence, there are a lot of avenues, and that's why I personally feel, as an ex-banker, SME banking is never the priority for anyone. I've seen that with my own eyes. You have to maybe lend to 500 SMEs to even come close to one corporate entity, single transaction. Hence, I was just hearing about what Karandas is doing, and honestly, I didn't know they were doing the kind of lending I just heard of. It's very interesting, and these are the kind of out-of-the-box solutions. You can have 100 banks sitting here and saying we have an SME sector, but I know the way they do their credit analysis, etc., etc. It's very rudimentary. It's very I'll give you an example. A lot of if there are any bankers here, they know that SME financials are not really given too much weight in terms of their genuineness. But at the end of the day, when the credit people come, they ask you all the questions on the same financials. And I asked them this: listen, 5 minutes ago you were telling me these financials are not worth much, but everything in your credit analysis is all about those financials, which any XYZ guy can make from any chartered accountancy firm. So it has to be a different method, and we use a completely different method. We're almost a completely equity run business. We do not go for any financing unless required. I'm doing a greenfield project now, for which at our level, because everything is much more documented, we're more towards the medium stage now. So yes, the banks are more than willing now, but when I needed it, it was quite disappointing, and that's when I found out there are other ways to grow.
You're saying that you don't need a loan, but you're getting the loan. Like a Yusfi Saab said that.
Something like that, actually, because the deal was that good, and it was a project finance in a way, so it's a completely new greenfield project. And for that, I felt the deal with the bank was pretty good, so now we're trying to go for that.
Great. So Wasif gave a very good perspective about our banking. So there's when the banks do they do their credit appraisal, and there is a cost associated with it. If they have a relationship manager, he can manage as if he's managing 10 say medium size or a corporate client. That guy is managing an amount which is maybe runs in a 500 million or more than that. But when he runs a 50 SME accounts, then the amount is much less, but the time consumption is much higher. So the cost of managing account is very high, and the cost of the documentation is similar. So the model is flawed, and the banks are not inclined to go towards it. And in the informal credit is swift, and if you're smart, if you have financial know-how, you can go to the credit and you can get at the best rate as well. It's not same for everyone, but that's there. And so one timing is like, when you know that you need the working capital credit, you need it. you go to the bank will approve the case maybe in a 2 months time, but by the time you don't need the credit. So that's one issue, they don't really go to the bank. And the other is documentation, but I think that's overstated because banks do not want to give credit to the SME, so they make the issue of the documentation. And if we go down the lane and if we see that, okay, probably banks are not geared up for this business, that's their not business model in Pakistan. So we may have non-banking financial institutions doing this job. And then we find out their leasing companies and their mudarbas and those who are functioning in the SME function. Out of that, the many died because of the many reasons. I don't want to go into that, but there's one leasing company single-handedly doing a portfolio of SME very good. That's Oryx Leasing. So if someone has cracked down that model, someone is working on that, someone has put down that cost low, someone have understand the how to assess the cash flows of business. You can assess the cash flow of the business of Maria B based on the amount of clients they come every day, what kind of a sale they have, and or a pie in the sky or anything, but they may not have a numbers to show on that. Someone has to assess that, someone has to assess the credibility, someone has to understand the returns on that and give the loan on that and kind of have a team which is of low cost. So that's we need probably there's more space of more NBFIs to be operating in Pakistan in the SME domain, and that's not something I'm saying out of my own imagination. There are the countries where you see the example. Look at the India, look at the China, look at the Malaysia, look at Turkey, and many other economies. When you go around and see that they thrive on the SME through the non-banking financial institutions. So that kind of gap between the informal bank financing to the commercial bank operation in Pakistan is a little too much to reach out in one go. So you need to have a layer in between. And that's where the role of NBFI is that. So Karandas and other who are sitting over there, so they probably have to have a higher footprint in that. They may think about forming some form of their own NBFI. So this is something, and now I take my discussion to something which is a fashion today, startup. And every day my friend Khurram Zafar is sitting over there, and a kid who just passed from the LAMS and goes to Khurram, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. And in 4 months he thinks that his valuation is going through the roof. But that's not what a startup entrepreneur is. On average, the successful entrepreneur startup has an age of 45. Ahmed is definitely younger than that, but he has a success story to tell. So Ahmed, I would like you to go through your success story of Jeete, and since you have a background through other e-commerce institution in Pakistan, and what kind of a round of financing you raised and you go abroad, can you bring those things to Pakistan as well?
Hello. Hi, Ji. Thank you very much. Ji. We're a tech product company, so very different from everything else because primarily we're a burn business, which means that we actually want to lose money for a long amount of time to attract customers. Now, when you try to take that kind of story for raising debt financing, it just doesn't work, right? Because you have no collateral. The only thing on our balance sheet, if there's anything on our balance sheet, it's probably our software or our technology, which is again, not collateralizable, I guess, in many ways. So companies like ours, our only sort of source of raising money is through equity. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, venture capital or even private equity money did not exist up until a year ago. I think that's when Khurram set up the first sort of VC fund for tech companies. So when we were raising money, even for when we started Daraz and we were trying to raise money for Daraz, there was no one in Pakistan we could go to raise equity. So we had to go abroad. Now, when you go abroad, the challenge that comes is, all of a sudden you have country risk associated with it. And then when people, look at discounting, our currency devaluation is a huge problem when people look at, valuing companies. The only sort of solid thing we have to sell is the fact that we always say we have 220 million people, we have an 80 million middle class, 50% of our population is under the age of 50. My driver is tech savvy because he has a smartphone and he uses my Wi-Fi to watch TikTok or whatever else he's watching, I don't know. So so that's the sort of so that's the story we have to sell of this burgeoning potential that the economy has. And then obviously with the economy slowing down last year, it's become even more challenging to raise equity. We've primarily raised money through friends and family, high net worth individuals. When we go to VCs, the challenge we face is they're like, oh, Pakistan, we don't have a Pakistan mandate. The question, why don't you have a Pakistan mandate? Well, Pakistan is in Southeast Asia. Okay, yeah, that's geography. I learned that. Pakistan is in India. You guys fight with India. So India is big enough. China is big enough. Southeast Asia collectively is big enough. Middle East is big enough. Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, these sort of countries are, too small to have, someone like Sequoia Capital or SoftBank looking at them independently. And as a region, they don't make sense with their association with anyone. Sort of that's our, and then the problem of precedence. They're like, okay, so has there been any exit? What do we compare you to? Okay, you compare us to Uber. They're like, no, Uber was in the US, what has happened in Pakistan that we can compare you to? Unfortunately, we haven't had any, we've had, so success is I don't think it's a term we should associate with ourselves just yet. We haven't had any successful exits or any success stories. So that's the sort of challenge we face. There's no debt available, equity, country risk, and all of those are challenges. Where do we go?
Question, do you think a company like Karandas can come up in a startup business like you?
So startup businesses, have a very high sort of risk, associated with them. Whatever 1 in every 10 startups is going to fail. So yeah, basically funds, they are VC funds, but the good thing is, okay, once there's one success story, it makes up for all the 9 other failures that you've had. So companies like, institutions like Karandas, other funds who have access to capital, IFC. We've raised money from IFC as well. CDC has put in money in tech startups. So yeah, all these businesses can do it. The only problem is I don't think they've done it in Pakistan yet. They've done it for the region. So we'd love for institutions like these to look at our market and build something here.
So the issue what Ahmed is telling about is not about the financing problem in Pakistan that other have, that because of the image and the other issues and the size of the Pakistan, that the foreign funding is not really coming into the startups. And startups are where entrepreneurs ideas they have great ideas and they can multiply into numbers of times. So probably the multilateral institutions, including Karandas, IFC and all that, should look for more startups in Pakistan, should have more success stories for commercial startup venture capitals to come on in Pakistan. On that note, I like to open the floor for questions. You can ask question for any of the participant or general question. Anyone? So there's no question. Nobody has any question. Yeah, please.
I think all of you outlined the challenges, which is very practical, what you faced yourself and your observations as well. But Naila, I was particularly struck by your comment where you said that, it's about giving up control that you're most conscious of. I mean, how do you see that being taken away? What would it take to build your trust into a system where you can maybe collaborate through a franchise system or any other system? Because expansion would require you to grow your team, right? So what would it take to build that trust?
I think the person I was getting into the deal with, I think, it's very important in any aspect of business that you need to be very comfortable with the person or persons you're dealing with. So I think, really, quite honestly, I think it depends on how comfortable you are with the terms, conditions. I know at some stage you have to give up control. You can't sort of, if you want the business to grow, you have to sort of, sort of let go and sort of let it sort of take off. But I think it would depend on who I was letting take control. I just have to be comfortable with that person or that entity, that comfort level. I think, that probably be it, really. Yeah.
So do we have more question, or I go for a cold call and point out someone to ask question. Is there anyone volunteer? You're asking again?
I can perhaps lead the same question on to the entire panel. I mean, what Naila has pointed out, and I feel I see this with a lot of entrepreneurs, and sometimes, I mean, the overall debate becomes that, especially with women entrepreneurs, we tend to get into a comfort zone, and we like the way a business is run, but we don't want to ruffle any more, make any stirs around it. But for all of you, do you feel that that leap from an SME to perhaps becoming larger and going regional and maybe going global is something that as Pakistani entrepreneurs, we don't really have a lot many success stories. So what keeps us in that comfort bracket? And do you feel that the regulatory and other framework can help you reach out? I mean, we'd love to facilitate the SMEs, but what about the next step where you see great success stories going from Pakistan and going global? Where's that little gap for you, all of you?
The SCCP was here and it was a great session. So everything needs to work together, right? The SCCP, State Bank. Now, we have had to domicile our company outside of Pakistan because the SCCP regulations are such that they don't allow for more modern sort of company structures with, sort of the convertible notes that we want to raise and, whatever modern instruments that we have. Similarly, repatriation and, remittances are a huge problem. Every time we want to bring money in, that's a challenge. So, so for us, to get more comfortable in international expansion, we have a lot of structural issues that we need solved, and this is why I sort of love this gathering, that everyone was here. You had State Bank here, you had SCCP here, you had the multilaterals here, and thank you, Karandas, for organizing this. So so it's sort of our dream to get all these people in the room and think about our businesses. And to be very honest, I was very pleased with sort of the progress that has been made in whatever the 5-7 years that we've been running startups.
I think that's a good question, and in Pakistan we at least have some, in the textile sector there are some good shining examples, like you must be following Khadi. It's the best example, and yes, if someone made the vision on day one that I want to be at par with the MNC in terms of HR, in terms of culture, in terms of product, there's nothing that can hold them back, and hats off to them for the vision. And I think when all of us started maybe 20 years back, they had a smaller vision, and who knows who knows where each one of them will be in the next few years. And inshallah, I think things are opening up in a much faster way than we think. And there maybe on the tech side, yes, but on the physical goods side and the textile side, Pakistan is already world-class manufacturer. So it's much easier for this line at least to go out. And the last question that you raised about how to trust and let go, of course, so I'm a bit of a risk taker, so I believe that 1 and 1 can make 11, and I've tried that. It fails once or twice, but once you found the right partner, and this you can find in different parts of the textile chain, I believe it's the fastest way to growth, because we cannot do everything to ourselves, and I myself am trying to sort of take myself out of the operations of the business and bring in people with textile experience for like 10-20 years. I think that's what everyone will do eventually, and you have to let go. So that's what I believe in.
Thank you. So it's a very interesting discussion we have, and we look forward to have more formal financing and the other kind of a financing option, venture capital, private equity, startup funding, and the NBFI in the SME financing role to come by. And we need to look forward that once we let go these SMEs, they become big and they can create the exportable surplus what the country needs. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to our panel.